What's going on, guys? This is But I'm Not Wasted, the podcast for creators and consumers of music and entertainment. I'm your host, Zach Wolf. I perform under the artist name Anaiah. Season 2. Let's get it. Yeah. What's going on? Welcome back to Season 2, But I'm Not Wasted. So for this episode, I interview my buddy Anaiah Orlando. He's a film director on the Pacific Northwest. And I had to make a caveat for this episode. We did it over the internet, and for some reason the internet was slow. And so there's a little bit of a delay sometimes in between me asking the questions and him answering. So just bear with it. It's a little bit laggy in certain points, but it's a really good episode, really good interview, and I hope you guys like it. Yo, what is going on, But I'm Not Wasted people? Welcome back. Season 2. For those of you that have followed us for a while, you know we took a little bit of a break post Season 1. I think we did like 17 or so episodes. But yeah, it was end of the year, holidays, Christmas, it was my birthday, so the whole thing, it was Jesus's birthday, so a lot of birthdays. And with that, just took a little bit of pause for the end of Season 1. But we are gearing up now. This is the start of Season 2. Really, really excited for those of you that have kept track with us this whole process. And we thought it'd be really cool for the start of this next season to have one of my really good friends on, Anaiah Orlando. He's a film director. He's a cinematographer. He works in the kind of film space. I'll let him describe himself a lot better than I am. But ultimately, yeah, he's one of my best friends, really creative guy. He's up there. He's genius level, really, really smart, knows what he's doing, very successful. So we wanted to have him on. So with that, I'll let you, Anaiah, introduce yourself.
Cool. Thank you, Zach. Thank you for having me on. I'm a big fan of what you're doing and what you continue to do. You put out a lot of really good work, and we've known each other for a while. Like Zach said, yes, I am a film director based out of Portland. Been here for about 7 years. In that time, have done quite a bit of freelance. Started out as a graphic designer, and then just did freelance video for the longest time before I committed to my childhood dream of being a film director, and that's what we're pursuing now. So that's what I do.
Cool. That's awesome. And yeah, Anaiah, you grew up in the Portland area, right? Kind of your whole life also?
Yeah, I moved around quite a bit growing up. In the earlier part of my life, I was actually born in Boise, Idaho. And then after about 3 years or so, we moved to Kansas City, Kansas. And then I was there until I was 10 or 11. And then my family actually moved to Portland for a year. And then we moved to northern Washington, like right next to the Canadian border. And so we were there for a while. And then when I turned 18, I moved back because I had a couple friends and had some connections out here. And so, that's when I made that move.
Okay, cool. And first kind of formal question around your process. So when you started pursuing film, I guess what did you start doing in it? Like when you started, when you were like, you kind of touched on it a little bit, when you were, I guess, like a young kid, what was the first initial goal? Like what was like the dream when you were like, I'm just getting going and this is like what I want to be when I grow up kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, well, first, like I had a proclivity towards film and just like art in general, pretty much off the bat. I actually like recently, like in the past couple years ago, I made like a short film full of, I can't remember if you'd seen it or not, but it's a short film full of clips of me, like VHS clips of me from anywhere from like being a toddler to now. And even back in that footage, you can see like how much I already had a gravity towards like music and film. And so like I always tell people, like if I wasn't a filmmaker, I would be a musician because music means that much to me. And of course, at some point I had to make that distinction. So to answer your question, I think it started out as a honest understanding and an honesty like with myself that there are a lot of avenues that you can go as an artist or just like as a human being, and like not limiting myself to one avenue and just exploring those things for as long as I had a passion for them. So I wouldn't say that, although if you ask specifically about film, you can trace it back to a start point. And I think that would probably be, I grew up in a Christian household, so like VeggieTales I remember
Let's go.
like storytelling. Yeah, I remember the combination of storytelling and communicating a worldview like being one of the first things I
Mm,
picked up on through art.
wow.
Like clearly
Wow.
VeggieTales is communicating their art through the worldview of Christianity. Like they're pairing, maybe not maybe not as subtle as I would do it, but like they're pairing scripture verse with a lesson
Yeah.
with like a fantasy story or whatever. And so like I already found that interesting, like from the jump. Like you can communicate a worldview or a perspective or
Mm,
like a lesson through art. Um, is like a really cool form of
yeah.
communication. So I think that's probably like the best way to answer that question.
Okay. That's super sick. And like, so I guess like with that, like what um what do you think like is the difference between like how has your vision changed since you started? I guess that's kind of the question I want to ask, if at all.
Hmm. That's a good question. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's a great follow-up question because that does kind of help me answer the other side of that story, which is that my vision changing has been going from even from a very young age, I want to say maybe like 8 or 9 years old, recognizing that there's a lot of different outcomes of this game of life, even just when it comes to, I mean, with everything, but with like a career specifically or a passion specifically, let me just like try everything. Um, the vision was that until the vision became filmmaking, which has really only been like the past 2 years. Because
Mm,
up until the last 2 years, I had other, like we can call them side quests that I was
yes.
passionate about. And I think it's a combination of like genuinely losing interest in some of those things that I was pursuing, and then also a combination of like life for me as an adult being hard enough to where it wasn't worth it to me to pursue those things because of how hard they were. Whereas filmmaking is
Mm,
the last thing left that no matter how hard it gets, like I'm still going to be willing to pursue it.
I love that, bro. And then I guess my follow-up question is like, because I have that for me. For me, that's making music as an artist. Like that's my shit that like, no matter what I do, I will do that. Even if everybody in the world is like, bro, you've missed it, you're not gonna do it. Like I'll be like, sorry, dude, I'm gonna keep making fucking music. Like I don't care. And so I guess with that, why? Like why is filmmaking the thing that you will do? Like till your bones wear out. You know, like why is that for you?
Um, that's actually that's funny that you asked that because somebody asked me that recently, but just like in a different way. I was actually having a
Yeah,
conversation with my mom about this, um,
let's go.
but we were talking about something very specific. We were talking about a poem, an epic poem that I really like. Actually, to go off on a tangent, I'm reading right now. I'm reading a book called Screenwriting. What's it called? Screenplays by Aristotle, or something like that. So it's
Mm,
this guy Michael. I forget his last name, but he it was a book that was gifted to me recently by like a guy who owns a studio here in Portland.
mm,
And basically, the book is like exploring ways that Aristotle explains storytelling uh, and like relating that to screenplays. And
yeah,
uh, and I say that to say that it's opened my eyes to some of the things that I used to be really passionate about and like why I was passionate about them. And it got me thinking about something that I had a real passion for back when I was in middle school and even high school, which is like to adapt epic poems into films. It's something that's like in
mm,
conversation right now anyway because uh, the world just like recently publicly learned, and I don't know if you know this yet, But Christopher Nolan's next film will be The Odyssey. Did you hear anything
No
about that?
way. I did not know that. Oh shit, bro. That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Which is so funny because like this is the guy who's like known for if we can do it practical, we will. And now he's taking on mythology. So like all the memes are like,
Yeah.
you know, actors showing up to set and it's like a real, snake monster or whatever. I forget what they're called. I don't know the mythology.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like he uses real
That's funny.
monsters. Uh,
Hmm.
but anyway, that's in conversation and it just got me thinking with the book that I'm reading, like all of that came to a conversation that I had with my mom, which was talking about how like in high school, I used to be really passionate about epic poems like the Iliad, like the Odyssey, like
Mm.
Gilgamesh, and so many others. And one of the ones that I've been passionate about for the longest time has been Dante's Divine Comedy, which is like Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso. So it's like it's a very Catholic book, but it's basically his journey from heaven, purgatory, and or sorry, hell, purgatory, and heaven.
Mm.
And it's like a classic story, but it's never been done in film. There's a film from the 20s um, that's like very bare bones. It's basically a stage play that they filmed, um, and but other than that, no one's ever like truly like tackled it and like done something with it because it's insane, um,
Mm.
and specifically Inferno. And her question to me was, why do you think you've been so obsessed with that for so long? Because I read that book in middle school, and I think that that relates to your question. Um,
Yeah.
what is it about filmmaking that what is it about filmmaking that you gravitate towards so much and like for so long? And one of the things for me is creating like beautiful like visual works.
Mm.
One of the reasons that I've been attracted to now that was my answer to my mom was like one of the
Yeah.
reasons that I've been attracted to the film adaptation of Dante's Inferno, I think is because you could, if done right, it could create some of the most visceral and complicated and emotionally devastating images like ever put to screen if you did it
Mm.
correctly. Um,
Yeah.
and like that idea is so fascinating to me because
Mm.
not to hate on a movie, but like most of them are recognizable in an instant. Versus like if you look at a Renaissance painting, like there's something about it, not even because it's Renaissance necessarily and like our relationship with like history, but just simply because they were like masterful works of art that take more than a
Hmm.
second to really like understand.
Wow.
That's fascinating to me, and I think that that's one of the most fascinating things to me about filmmaking is that if you give a shit about it, it is possible to make something like that.
Mm. That's really cool. And I think this kind of goes with maybe a trend that I'm seeing in the music space too, something that I'm kind of pressing into even as an artist. But I think a lot of people are, at least I hope, kind of almost done with a little more of like the really extreme pop kind of world. And I think people are being drawn back towards like art that's taken a while for people to make, for like a lack of a more poetic way to say it. Basically, the idea that, like, kind of like you're saying, it's almost like moving away from kind of the quick and easy filmmaking process to things that are like masterpieces again. I didn't even know even for myself,
Mm-hmm.
for my artist project, I produced under my name. I released music under my name, Zach Wolf, for the last 8, 9 years. I don't think you know this, or maybe no, we talked about this when we got cigars, I think. But basically, I'm like letting that old brand be done. All the stuff I released under Zach Wolf, and I'm going to start releasing music under my first name, which is just Zachariah. Excuse me, moving forward. But the way I'm producing it is like way more organic production, like, you know, having a bunch of musicians come in and like help me with the process, whether that's just creative input or actual like, tracking like their instrumentation. One of my buddies is like a professional composer. He's going to help compose like strings and like orchestral parts to a lot of it. So me personally moving away from that, Do you think that's a space that film's going as well? I mean, it kind of sounds like it might be, but just like, I guess, or is that a space you're just going, or do you think that's a trend in film, like moving away from kind of the quick thing, or actually like, taking time with like building these kind of more long form works of art within film, if that makes sense?
But before I answer that question, when you're talking about y from your perspective, you feel like you see like art, or I'm sorry, music moving from like quick pop, and maybe pop is maybe the wrong word, but like just quickly produced like TikTok hits or whatever, to like stuff that
Yeah.
really like takes some time. Um, would that also fall into the category of like the appreciation of like the album versus like a
Mm,
hit song?
well, I don't
Have you
know.
seen
I don't
anything
know.
like that?
Like, I almost feel like I would hope so, and I think so, but I almost feel like people's attention spans are still so small right now. Like, not like I'm knocking people, like myself included. Like, we're just so used to so many instant gratification things that I still think it'll be a while before the album is truly appreciated again. At least except by like the super fans always love an album, but outside of like that, you know, I don't really see that as a whole. I don't know. I hope so, but I don't feel like that's necessarily where it's at yet. But
Well, it's just so funny that you say that because, uh, like, I think about because for me, I've always been an album guy. Like when I some girl that I liked in middle school or maybe in high school showed me Spotify,
same.
and I got my first
Whoa.
like music subscription through that. And I really just did it to impress her because she was really into like Blink 182 and like Sum 41, and like the Wonder Years was really big at that time, which I still love that band so
Mm,
much. So
mm,
like she introduced me to all these like, bands, and I wanted a way to listen to them. And then that led into me like spending like an ungodly amount of hours just like researching artists. And I
mm,
quickly fell in love with the album as a concept more than
mm,
anything else. And obviously, like her and all of our friends at the time were all into like making, we would like call them mixtapes, even though they're not even mixtapes, like they're just
mm.
playlists. Um,
Yeah.
and send them to friends and stuff. Cool. Like there's definitely a time and place for that. And I love that. And I love everything about music, whatever. But like albums was always it for me. Like I was always interested in exploring the visionary's vision, and like if they even cared about that. So I wouldn't even gravitate towards artists who wouldn't be interested in creating a work of art, a specific vision, like a finished album product. Like I would be the guy telling people, when you listen to this album, you have to listen to the songs from like top to bottom. Like we're
Mm,
not pressing shuffle on a new album. So that doesn't make any
yeah.
sense. Um,
Yeah.
maybe that's because like I'm like that. Like if because I did 3 albums in high school, like music albums.
Mm. Oh, yeah, yeah.
One of
Cool.
them was, did I tell you that or show you that before?
I think you've sent it to me. I think we've, in one of our
Have
hands, I
I
think
had
you
I
did
ever?
show that to me. I feel like I low-key have it on my Spotify, to be honest. I think I might have it, bro. I think I've saved it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think one of them's still up. It might come down this year just because like I'm tired of paying for it when like I don't promote it. But
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, I did like an EP with like 4 or 5 tracks. That was just like simply like voice memos of me playing piano, and then I did like a true like concept album that was all like I think somebody gave me a version of Logic, and so I just did
Mm,
everything I possibly could with my access to Logic and the plugins that it came with. And then like a couple years later, I had like a ton of, and this is actually like one of those things that reminded me that like filmmaking is my truest passion.
mm,
Was like when I did that album, anytime I would talk about it with somebody, I would say it's a soundtrack for a movie that doesn't exist. Well, it's like,
mm,
why would you say that if you didn't like basically just want to make a movie? But I was just fascinated with that
yeah.
aspect of filmmaking. So like I only wanted to make an album because I wanted to make a soundtrack to something. Um,
Mm,
and that's so real for me today because I'm working on my first true narrative short film, and I'm working with like a
yeah.
handful of composers, and
Mm,
like I understand them better than I would have if I hadn't done that project. So it's cool.
yes.
But
Yeah.
the last thing that I did was uh, it was such a whim, and I feel like most of like my best work comes out of like frustration with corporate jobs just because of where I'm at in my career. But like I think I was
Yeah.
working at AT&T at the time, and like there was nobody in the store. I had my laptop with me, and I had tons of voice memos from like the past 5 years, and I picked my favorite ones, and I only picked voice memos that were recordings of other people playing music, and I just put it up on Spotify and just called the album Recordings, and they're just like moments and fragments in time of my life of like, some girl that I knew in college who actually like is in my life now randomly, but like she we were hanging out, and she did a cover of some song, and like that encapsulates for me, like I made it for me, but like that
Mm,
encapsulates the moment in my
mm,
like of my college experience. And but again,
yeah.
it's just me
That's
like
cool.
creating some sort of like film in visual form, or I'm sorry, in audio format. Um, and so
Yeah.
anyway, I try and
Totally.
weave way out of some of these rabbit holes, but I think I'm getting lost at this point. To answer your question, um, sorry, I think that came from we're talking about albums, and like it's just funny
Yeah.
because
Totally.
like Kendrick's new album came out. Every
Mm,
single person that I talked to about Kendrick's new album said, I said, "Have you listened to Kendrick's new album?" And they said, "Yeah, I like some songs and I didn't like some songs." I've never in my life thought that before.
mm,
Like anytime somebody says that, I have to like now I can do it, but beforehand, like in high school, I wouldn't know where to go from there in the conversation
yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's not an interest of mine. Like I'm interested in like what the concept of the album is. Now, granted, I'm only considering that because I know Kendrick to be somebody who does that. Not every artist
Yeah.
cares about that. Um,
Totally. Yeah.
but
Totally.
anyway, it was just a tangent that I wanted to go on because I feel the same way. I don't live in the same
Yeah.
world that you do, and I don't pay
Mm,
attention probably as much as you do. But when you say something like
sure.
that, it makes me think about an appreciation for
Yeah.
the album versus the hit. And I think social media
Yeah.
has something to do with that, most likely.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. And then like with that, I guess kind of bringing it back to like more of your core, like what's your kind of answered it, I guess, but what's
Yeah.
your biggest why behind your doing what you're doing? Like what's your why? What's your reason for being in it, for being in film?
Yeah. Let me also answer your question, bro, before because I didn't know if you wanted to talk more about the album or if you wanted to talk about your
Sure.
question from before. So I'll
Yeah,
answer
no
that
worries.
question for you as well. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's relevant. I actually think that music might have some of the same effect. Like, actually, I hope that music has some of the same effect. um, for film, because somebody asked me that recently. They were like, "Oh, do you think that because of TikTok and social media and all that stuff, like people's attention spans are just too short and they're not going to enjoy a movie anymore?" And I'm like, "Not really. Like, if I look at like what's actually happened, people have appreciated what movies are more because they know that they aren't social media. Like
Mm,
instead of it like creating a instead of the gap that it's creating alienating moviegoers, it just makes the gap obvious, and it makes the people who are on the other ends of the gaps be more themselves. Like when you go to the theater, it's not a TikTok. So like if you want short form content, go to TikTok. But if you
mm.
want a movie, we're gonna
Go to
let
movies.
Christopher Nolan, Martin Scorsese, Robert Eggers like make their 3 hour film. We don't care. Like The
Yeah.
Brutalist is about to come out. I don't know if you know what it is, but it's like, I don't want to say a new director because he's been putting out good work, but he's like a relatively unknown director to the public, and they're letting him do a wide release of a 3.5 hour movie. Like, I don't
Mm.
know if that actually would have happened as easily if we weren't making the distinction. Like, now people like me who are like, I don't, I get it, but like, I don't want the short form all the time. Like, I want to be able to see somebody's vision.
Mm.
They're now allowing people who have
Yeah.
that vision to do longer
So,
works. Like, I don't know
mm.
the last like hit blockbuster that was like under 2 hours. Like, that
Yeah,
doesn't, I don't even know if that's a thing
totally.
anymore,
Yeah.
which is just
Yeah. So
interesting. So anyway, I wanted to talk
you,
about that.
yeah, no, no, that's good. So you do think that that is the trend in film, is that it's moving towards a little more like true, masterpieces kind of being what's like still standing out in the film world, not just short
I
form
think
stuff. Well, that's good. And then yeah, what's your why? Like, what's your reason behind like your core of why you're doing it? Like you're in that space.
Yeah. The thing that we talked about before, I think, is one big one. Like, I think because we can see everything all the time, it gets underwhelming very quickly.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
I grew up with the internet. I've had access to virtually everything since I was like 11. And so
Mm.
like what's weird is like at the same time that I've grown a passion for like great works of art, I've also been handed like next to trash like at the same time, on the same platform even. Like, it's becoming more common that you can like watch a video of like a cat playing piano right next to like a Martin Scorsese film. It's in the
Yeah.
same thing. So
Crazy.
it's
That's
just like a
crazy.
weird world to live.
Yeah.
I've always just like tried to make a distinction. So I think, anyway, sorry. So like, what I say that to say that like, I just have, as I get older, like a deeper appreciation for making great works of art. And so like that at its core, I think is like why I do it. I think that
Mm.
making
Cool.
movies, to me, like, of course I'm going to say this. So take it for what it is. Like, it's just me saying this, but in my opinion, like, filmmaking is the greatest, like, most
Mm.
effective, like, form of art.
Mm.
And like, this actually might be something you want to, if you want to, that we could get into. But like,
Yeah.
I respect anyone who would have a different opinion because they need to have that opinion to be great at what they're doing. So like, I'm not saying that like what I'm saying is the absolute truth, but it needs to be the absolute truth for me to do what I'm doing. And like, so like the absolute truth for me
Mm.
is filmmaking is the greatest form of like art form, and it pairs visual with audio, and it puts you in a space to like sit down and be captivated, not pay attention to anything else. Even theaters now are very, I mean, thank God that like they play a video, and not everybody pays attention to this, I guess, but like, every theater I've ever been to, they play a video where it's like 5 minutes of basically a guy telling you to not be on your phone, which I think is cool. Like, know where you're at, because like something special can happen from that. And so when you ask me like what my why is, I think it's to create like a great work of art that lasts a long time,
Yeah.
and to inspire people, like to show somebody
Mm.
something different. One of my favorite quotes is that art is to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comforted. And I've
I
never
love that.
related so much to something because, yeah, because like I'm a contrarian. Like, I hope that I'm right when I argue with somebody because I love to argue. Because
Mm.
I would rather like trailblaze something. Like, it's like the quote that's like, it's better to admit you're in the wrong room than spend your whole life in the wrong room. Like
Mm,
it's better
that's
to
good.
like,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
yeah, like it's better to feel the shame momentarily of being in the wrong room than to like, because you don't want to hurt your ego, you just stay in the wrong room for the rest of your life. Like I would be the type of
Mm,
person that would tell you first, and I feel like filmmaking can do that. So like once I learned that filmmaking can do that, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like in some ways, it can be the most effective. Like you're in another
mm,
universe when you watch a movie, if you allow it.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you give yourself to the movie, uh,
Yeah.
and you like it's like mystery movies. Like my dad growing up would always try and figure out the mystery, and I never could relate to that because I honestly just want to be surprised. I want to like be. Now, if it's a really poorly written movie, like then I'll just figure it out,
Mm,
just being a smart person. But like I don't want to try and figure it out. Like I want to go along with what it's telling me to go along with, and like and I'm along for the ride. And so I think if I can comfort the disturbed and disturb the comforted,
mm,
like then I've done my job. And I think the only way to do that with film is to just be honest. I don't think it's,
mm,
and this is my last thing, but I don't think it's a filmmaker's job to tell you what to think, but rather just be like as honest as as they possibly can about a question they're asking, and then you just answer that question for yourself. Like a
mm,
perfect example of this is the short film that I'm working on is a very meta like commentary on society and like our relationship with technology, and like there are sub conversations happening within that. One of them is like our sexual relationship with society,
mm,
and
mm.
uh, I just saw a film this year called Anora. I don't know if we talked
Yeah.
about this at all,
Mm, mm,
but it explores one individual's sexual relation, well, no, multiple individuals' sexual relationships with each other, but also I think there's a larger thing to be said about like, because the movie revolves around a sex worker, it is kind of like her relationship with society. Um, but
yeah.
that's the thing, and this is like why I bring it up is because when I watched that movie, I
Mm,
realized just how important it is to just simply be honest and not formulate an opinion. Like other people
yeah.
will formulate the opinion that they need to, if you can just be as honest as possible about whatever you're portraying. And that movie, I mean, it's like the phrase "get out of your own way." I always heard that from
Mm,
directors and thought it was like just like a pretentious thing to say. Like, what does that even
yeah.
mean? Like, get out of your own way when you're working on something. But like seeing that
Mm,
film, I know what getting out of your own way looks like.
mm,
And it just looks like being as honest as possible and just like letting people experience moments through film. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, you definitely got me on like a couple different tangents.
No, that's good, bro. That's good. That was all really good. And like, I definitely think it's cool just to like boil it down to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comforted. Like that feels like kind of the core of that answer, which is just like I guess that's just like a very cohesive why, which I like. Yeah, and then kind of last question, just like what advice would you give to someone who is wanting to go into the film space as well, a few years behind you, decade, whatever, like what would you say kind of some good first steps just to kind of getting involved?
That's the first question you've asked me where I know exactly what my answer is immediately, which makes me think, do
Nice.
you know what my answer might be?
Just get going, just start.
That's a good one. Yeah. That
Yeah,
would
just do
probably
something.
honestly that might even be my second favorite answer to that question. But no, immediately my answer would always be self awareness. The reason that I
Mm,
find myself set apart in spaces, especially like spaces I'm familiar with, is because of my self awareness, and it's something that I am continually learning,
mm,
but something I didn't have up until like a couple years ago, and it is like my,
mm,
yeah, it's like the number one thing that I want to talk about with not just filmmakers but other artists. Um, right, like anybody in the spaces that we're talking about today. Like
Mm.
when I look at other filmmakers, it seems to me that even though there's a spectrum of talent, like somebody may be more naturally gifted than I am,
Yeah.
most likely the reason that I would get ahead of them is my self-awareness. And I don't know, maybe getting
Mm.
ahead of someone is not the right thought.
Sure.
Maybe I'm thinking that for a couple different reasons, but um,
Yeah.
let's not say that. Let's just say to be like your best self, and to like perform the best and to and accomplish your goals. You're gonna receive pushback, so I think that's why I say like get ahead of people. I'm really just saying get ahead of the haters when I say that,
Yeah.
because
No, I know what
there'll
you
be
mean.
pushback, I
It's
guess, in any
competitive.
way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
competition in anything, but
Yeah.
I think self awareness
Hmm.
is the biggest thing because what I
Cool.
see is I see film directors saying to themselves, this is what will help me accomplish my goals, but then they're like massively missing this big piece. And it's like, have you not just taken a step back and looked at like what you're doing from somebody else's perspective, or like looked
Mm.
at um, like what other directors have done? And I think it's a combination of like surrounding yourself with the right people and then being really introspective all the time. I think those two things, although they've
Mm.
also been maybe like a detriment to me, or I'm sorry, maybe I don't know if that's the right word. I think sometimes they've been a disadvantage to me.
Yeah.
That have been a huge benefit to me and something that's
Yeah.
come naturally to me is like, let me surround myself
Yeah.
with people who are honest with me and tell me like where I've misstepped and how I'm coming across. Oh, it's not anything like I thought I was coming across. Let me make that change. And a combination of that and then me like going home and thinking about it and maybe overthinking it and maybe I need to stop thinking about
Mm.
it. But yeah, I think self-awareness is the biggest thing. Like
Mm.
practically that looks like showing people your work, asking people how they feel about it, and then being like, why do they feel about it, or why do they feel that way about it? Are they right? Do maybe I have something that they don't understand that I need to communicate better, or not misunderstanding that walking into a room and like, because as a filmmaker and like a writer, you could walk into a room and be like, this is that type of person, this is that type of person. Like you can characterize people, like
Mm.
make caricatures out of people and like kind of like I remember like being in high school and like or even in college would be the best example because that's when I started to like realize that I had like almost no self-awareness. I would like walk into rooms and be like, oh, that guy likes that girl, and that guy is jealous of that guy, and like all those things are like apparent to me immediately based on how people were acting. But I never took into consideration like how I was coming across to people.
Mm. Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
and like I
That makes
had,
sense.
thankfully, like there were a few friends that I had who just like shot straight with me and were like, no, like
Yeah.
you're wrong. Like there's just no like
Yeah.
this is why that's happening. Um, but like yeah, self-awareness and just thinking a lot and thinking out loud
Yeah.
and like changing and adapting, like being adaptive. um like
Yeah.
the world is changing really 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 fast. Everybody's worried about
Mm.
AI. Politics are ever changing, money's changing,
Mm.
America's changing, the world's changing. Like how can I fit
Yeah.
in this space and like do what I love and do it well and like make an impact? Like you're gonna
Yeah.
have to change and adapt all the time, and just be
Yeah.
flexible. And like you said, I'm glad that you brought it up. Um, just do it. Like that was your first guess of what I was gonna say, and I would say that's a great follow up. Would just be, yeah,
Yeah.
just like get to work now. Um,
Yeah. Totally.
it's just gonna take work. Um,
Yeah.
Yesterday, I spent 5 hours and I shot 56 videos. So,
Let's go.
you know, and like, but
Yeah.
it's like, what else am I gonna do? Like, this is it. Like, this is the dream. So,
Yeah.
like, let's just get to work and like enjoy the work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Hell yeah, bro. Well, thank you, bro. That was all really good, super helpful, and I think really helpful for someone who's also just wanting to get in that film space or is in that film space, just to hear someone else's thoughts and kind of like the way you process through it. I wish we had like 2 more hours because there were things you said that I'm like, damn, I want to go into that, but there's just infinite time we don't have. So maybe we'll do a second episode because I do want to kind of go after some of that stuff too. But yeah, thank you, bro. And like, where can people follow you? Where can they stay up to date just with what you're doing, social media handles, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. My name on almost every social platform will just be my first and last name, which is Anaiah, which is A before every other letter. So Anaiah, and then Orlando like the city. So that's my Instagram handle. That is my email. That is my YouTube channel name. That is my TikTok. What other platforms? That's my LinkedIn. That's everything. That's my website as well. So just
Cool. Sweet.
AnaiahOrlando.com.
Okay. Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you, AnaiahOrlando.com. We appreciate that. I like how you intro that A before every letter. That's actually really helpful to know. I was like, oh, I'm reading it
Well,
as you're
I've said
saying.
it
I'm like,
enough
is that really
times.
true? I was like,
Yeah,
no, it's
yeah,
actually
yeah,
right.
yeah.
It's literally A
People
before
get
every
so
letter.
confused
Yeah.
when I just say
Yeah.
Anaiah. They're like, how many A's? I don't know. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I gotta say
totally,
that
bro.
first.
Totally, bro. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate your insight. Really appreciate everything you shared today. I think is really valuable for me and just for the listeners that are going to be, yeah, watching this episode. And thank you guys so much, but I'm not wasted family. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow this episode. Do that. Follow Anaiah. Check out my stuff. Zach Wolf. Zach Wolf Music is most of my handles for everything. You guys maybe know that already, but yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. And yeah, we'll see you soon. But I'm not wasted. Peace.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe. Like legit, I want to know your feedback. I want to know if you liked it, if you didn't like it, talk about different things, whatever you want. Share this everywhere across your social media. That helps us grow. And yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. Let's go.